Hi, this is Liz Cornell, and I'm going to talk to you now about the iliopsoas muscle on the horse. And it seems to be a big problem for horses, and I run into it a lot as a massage therapist. And let's just talk about where it is. So if we move over here and look at the horse, obviously it's in the hind end, and it's technically a deep muscle. It's actually a series of 3 muscles that work together. You have your major and your minor psoas muscles. They kind of work in tandem together. And then the third muscle is the iliacus. But we'll just call the 2 psoas muscles psoas, okay, for this demonstration. So unfortunately, it's considered a deep muscle, and therefore, it's mostly in the pelvic chamber. I'll call it the pelvic chamber. So this is a 13-year-old Dutch warm blood that's working on 4th level pre-St. George. So I'm really asking him to engage his hind end a lot. So that muscle is technically the real power muscle on the horse. It's the muscle that he teaches them to engage, pushes them out for extension, racing, jumping, lifts them in the jumping. It's the real thick power muscle in the hind end. Unfortunately, it's very hard for us to get at it since it's so deep in the pelvic system. However, there are ways to test to see if that muscle is sore, and there's a few things we can do to help that muscle. All right, so just so we know where it's located, the ilia muscle, not the iliacus, but the psoas muscle originates in a couple places. If you look for the last 2 ribs at the top, underneath, now see he's moving away because he does get sore in this muscle a lot. So if I push here, there he got a little worried about it. So you can test that location. Okay, so underneath the last 2 ribs. Yeah, okay. He's worried I test it all the time. Now the muscle runs sort of next to this, but it actually runs along the lumbar, kind of underneath though. It's along the lumbar, under those transverse processes. And then it's going to go down, and it's going to have its insertion point on the inside near the top of the femur. Okay? So it's kind of on the inside in there. So you really can't get to it when it's in that area. Now the iliacus, its other muscle that's part of the system, actually is a little bit deeper. It starts in the SI, underneath the SI area. There's 4 points there. However, it does run in the pelvic chamber, and then it fuses actually with the end of the psoas muscle. And together they insert at the top of the femur, like I said. So it's inside, you can't get to it. I can push all day long, he doesn't care, because I can't get to it. However, to test for this muscle soreness, what you want to do is, like I said, you check here. The other place on the end of the tubercocci, since the muscle's down underneath in there, if he stands up square, hey buddy, sorry, he's resting this leg. Hold on, let me just push him up. Oh, good boy, good boy. So if I take my fingers and I dig down here, see how he just dropped? Yeah, there he did. And I did it on both sides because it's often bilateral. And on him, I know it is. So that's another point to test. The other thing is you run your hand along the lumbar and you press. Now this is not so bad. There we go. You press here. I got a little bit of a reaction there. Okay, so those are the 3 areas. Now sometimes you go through here and you think it's in front of the SI, they react. They can if they're really sore, they will react badly through here, badly here. He just reacts a little. See how he drops a little bit? And then he was more serious here. Those are your 3 test points. At that point, I know that the iliopsoas or the psoas muscle is a problem for this horse. Okay, so that's how you look for the problem. Then the real issue is, in my opinion, why is the horse this sore? Okay, now in the case, and you're going to have to do a little detective work, because in the case of this horse, who I've known for the last year and 4 or 5 months, he had a left hind injury down at the bottom of the suspensory ligament, down at the branch, in the inside of the lateral branch of this left hind. He did have a strain. He was given a lot of time off. So unfortunately, and he was lame on it for a few months. Then he kind of came out of the lameness, but a lot of his muscles, actually, he was an upper level horse at one point in dressage. He was very muscled up, so a lot of his muscling atrophied because he didn't use himself anymore, and he was just turned out. So when it came time to putting him back into work, I found of all his muscles, because I helped rehab him and get him back into shape, I checked the psoas muscle all the time on this horse, and it was very sore for the first 4 or 5 months that we started him back in work. I mean, it was sore. A little sore on the right, but very sore on the left, because the left hind had that injury. So when a horse has an injury, and they stop using that muscle when they're used to using it, then of course they're going to be sore when you bring them back. Okay? So we want to know what are all the causes, potential causes, and I have my cheat sheet. I don't want to forget anything. Obviously, some kind of fall or injury, as I mentioned. They could get cast. That could cause them to be sore in that muscle. If they're overworked and stressed. And again, this is the powerful muscle that really is really behind the strength in the hind end of the horse. So if they weren't warmed up correctly and they stressed it out. Now another thing that can cause it is deep footing. Well, it's okay, nobody deaf. Deep footing, that can cause that muscle to get sore. I have seen poorly fitted saddles definitely cause the problem. Because not only do they get sore in the back from a saddle or in the shoulder area from a badly fitted saddle, because they're really trying to push through and work, and they have to work extra hard to push through the soreness that's being caused here. So they have to work extra hard in the hind end, and that can actually cause that muscle to be sore. The other thing is if a rider is sitting too far back in the saddle, and stand up a minute. Yeah. So if a rider sits too far back and gets close to putting pressure at the beginning of the muscle, then that psoas muscle. So some riders ride way in the back with like a chair seat with their feet forward. That can actually injure the psoas muscle too. Anytime the psoas muscle has to work extra hard, it's going to get sore for whatever reason. Poor hoof trimming. Yeah, the feet, I've seen the whole SI area, the whole hind end gets sore from badly trimmed feet. So there is something called a sprung pelvis. You can look that up online. That's when, where the two pelvises join, it actually splits. That can be pretty painful. Sometimes, the other thing is that the pelvis can be out of whack chiropractically, and that for whatever reason, again, usually a fall or something, and that can twist on the muscle too, so that can cause a sore muscle. So check the pelvis for alignment. We talked about that in another tape. So in that case, either the pelvis was injured and it caused the problem. They also say that muscle, if it atrophies and it's sore, it can actually pull the pelvis itself out of alignment. So, that can cause the muscle to be sore. So, are they lame? Sometimes they are, a lot of times they are not though. If the muscle's just sore and it's just part of their work. So, you want to look for that. So if you see that they're off or they're dropping that side, that hip, when they move out, and you determine they're sore, check that muscle. But again, it doesn't mean that muscle is the cause of the unsoundness on that limb. It could be anything in the limb too. So, when in doubt, have a vet come, of course. So that's something to be aware of. So if they're sore on both sides, that's pretty common. One may be worse than the other in terms of soreness. Okay. The other thing is when they're this sore back here, they will start compensating in the front end. So a lot of your muscles up here and your pectorals and the front end, deltoids, etc., they can be sore also when the hind end is that sore, that psoas muscle. Okay, so that's the story on the muscle. What do you do about it? Well, one thing is try to figure out the cause, because if it's something that they're doing, if it's really bad riding, okay, or, unless you see them ride. But talk to the owner and get a history and try to figure out, what's causing it. Because if it's chronic, then they need to figure out what's going on. If it was a one-time acute incident where they fell or something, sometimes you never know. You don't see them fall most of the time, right? We're not babysitting them 24 hours. So, what can we do? Well, obviously, as I mentioned, it's a deep muscle, so it's very hard to get to. But what I would recommend is going ahead and massaging that area. And I often start with tap openings, just to help get the blood flow going. Oh, it's dusty. And then, yes, some kneading work, some circle work. There he's a little sore. Again, I do some circles. So you really can only get at this area. This is the main area. You really can't get to any other part of the muscle, unfortunately. So honestly, besides just some basic massage work that you can do for the horse, I like to tape. If it's really bad, I'll do a kinesiology tape, just sort of an SI taping, so that you're running along the lumbar so it extends a little bit further forward. And then, or you might do a Y. You could do a Y and split it here so that it comes down this way. That's probably what I would do, now that I'm looking at it. I would do a Y, start back here, and have your two branches of the Y come out here. That's probably what I would do to tape it. That's probably the most you can expect to do to help the horse. But eliminating the cause, if it's a chronic issue, would be good. Now this horse, he's constantly sore because I'm always asking him to sit down and engage a little more. Every month it gets a little harder to work. So he's a lot better, believe it or not. I used to just barely touch him when we started him back about, 10 months ago. He would just be, really bad. And so he's a lot better. But I knew he would be a good demo because at least I know it's been an issue for him for quite a while. So that's the story on the psoas. I hope it's helpful. And if you have any questions, just get in touch and I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you. Okay, one other thing I didn't mention, I almost forgot. is that if you go online and YouTube, Heather Mack has a video about releasing the psoas muscle on the horse. She has a technique where you press. You and another person are going to lean and press and push the pelvis this way, the tuber coccyx, and push it up, the two of you. And you hold and you hold and you press and you hold, and it's supposed to release the muscle. I've tried it on about half a dozen horses. I only had one horse respond positively to it that did a lick and chew. Nothing else, no other horse responded that way, neither did this horse. So I think it might work for some horses, but it's a very popular video out there on YouTube, so I just wanted to mention that I have tried that technique and I didn't feel it yielded great results, but it probably does work for some horses. So that's it.